This conversation was originally a live Q&A which took place in April 2024.
First time I had a post that got more than 1,000 likes. And I was like, wow, that's like insane. How can you get 1,000 likes for a post? It was crazy. And then, 2-3 months later, that happened once a week because you just got more followers and it just becomes more normal. So viral posts also is kind of a function of what is your audience, right?
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. If you enjoy listening to our show, make sure to follow the podcast and leave a rating. And now, here's your host, Sylvan.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. Enzo, a very well welcome to this live stream. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Hey, Sylvan. Thank you for inviting me. Happy to be here.
We're going to talk about how to build your brand on LinkedIn. And there's probably no better person across whole Switzerland than you to ask about this. You are the CCO at Anybotics. Besides that, you're also LinkedIn's official Swiss robot man. I think you're mentioned as top voice in that sector on LinkedIn. You built a very significant followership. But before you actually started out your career, you worked in corporates and then you only moved to startups a few years ago. So why the shift? Why was that the right move for you?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me here on this live stream today. Going to be exciting to talk a bit about LinkedIn and about the journey to build that growth. So how did I end up in a startup? I spent about 10 years in corporate functions in two large Swiss industrial companies. First of all, in corporate development, strategic marketing, and then I joined a company in sales and sales management. And then after 10 years of actually learning from the big corporates and really getting the processes and the details up and running, I decided that I wanted to get more closer to the action, a bit more closer into the in the steering wheel of building something, and decided to join a startup, now scale up, Anybotics. Actually, a circle coming close or closing a little bit because I've always been fairly entrepreneurial also during my studies, and earlier I worked in many student initiatives. I founded an association, so kind of always had this entrepreneurial gene. Just wanted to get that back in action, and then after 10 years corporate, finally made the move to joining a startup, and has been a great decision. So I've been enjoying it a lot over the last nearly 3 years now.
Amazing. Very glad to hear that. If you look at your CV, we could also say you sort of got the corporate education and then switched to the startup application. Do you think that this is sort of a good career start or career setup that you would recommend to people in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's probably not the right way to do it, but for me, it was a great one. I was able to learn really a lot and very different things in my 10 years in corporate. I started off being part of a internal kind of corporate strategy team, which was basically an internal BCG consulting team at the first firm. There were three other guys, and two guys, one lady, that did 5 to 10 years of BCG consulting, and me, who was a fresh grad. So I was basically an internal consulting house, so quite a lot to learn, very, very diverse topics. And then my second company, I was more in sales, so really going out, driving around and meeting customers on the construction sites every day, and really learning, from the ground up how to do sales, and then getting into sales management and taking along all the processes that these companies have developed over time, and then basically packing them all in my backpack, then bringing that over to a startup. So you still have to build everything, but at least you've seen it how big companies do it. It's different as a startup because you can't build the end solution right on day one, because you always need to take a step by step and but have the clear vision in mind. And I think that certainly helped. I'm not saying that this is the only way. I think you can also, right from university or right from not even having a degree, kind of start your own business. If you're entrepreneurial, you'll figure it out as well. I think there's not a right or wrong. For me, it was a good way, and finally being able to really contribute and shape and build something is great.
it really helped you to build that experience that you now brought into Anybotics. And you mentioned sales. I mentioned before you're LinkedIn's top voice. You have been mentioned as #1 Swiss voice in robotics. And you've built this presence, as it seems, almost from scratch. You built the big LinkedIn followership. And first of all, as a sales guy, I got to ask, why is the LinkedIn presence for you important and even relevant in your day job? Why do you put all that investment in there?
Yeah, so I mean, it's quite interesting that there's still salespeople out there, even in my team, that are not using LinkedIn as much as they probably should. For me, I believe LinkedIn as such as a platform has made a tremendous kind of change in the past years from basically being your online CV to becoming really a platform where you generate business and leads with. And there's a lot of focus from LinkedIn itself to put content creation up front, making sure that people actually not only go and see the background or the CV of certain people, but they actually stay longer on the platform because they get their information from there. I do the same. I get a lot of my news and what's happening is actually coming from platforms like LinkedIn, and many people do so. So also your prospects as a sales person, your prospects are most likely also on LinkedIn, depending on what persona you sell to. And if that's the case, there's hardly any better channel than actually connecting with them on LinkedIn and interacting with them. So there's a lot of opportunities there. What I see, what is interesting is, most of the sales guys, they don't like to do, well, that's maybe the wrong way, but doing outbound, is not the most favorable things of the normal salesperson. Put it that way. And LinkedIn is very similar. You can do outbound only because you're just sending connection requests and that's it. And then you hope that someone answers you and then you say, okay, now I want to have a discussion with you. That usually doesn't work. You can get inbound there as well. And the way you do get inbound is you create content, your relevant audience is actually starting to follow you and like what you produce. And suddenly they contact you, and that's a much better starting point for a sales discussion as well. So there's a lot to win from doing that, and amazing to me that there are still people out there that don't use this super easy to get started kind of platform.
I love that. And I think the differentiation you just made, it's not just like sending out cold emails or cold LinkedIn messages. It really is placing yourself as a knowledgeable person in this field that you're operating in and to really get these inbounds. So I wonder, what is your secret sauce? Where did you start? Where you said, hey, you had a few hundred, maybe a few thousand followers. Where did you start to then really, hey, I now double down on my LinkedIn game? What was the secret sauce? How did you stand out?
Well, the interesting thing about LinkedIn is that, or probably about any platform, but especially I know the stats from LinkedIn, that there's some 85 to 90% of the people that are on LinkedIn, and there's like 900 million active users on LinkedIn, so it's quite big. Most of them, they just never do anything. They just look at what's popping up in their feed. Then you have like this, I don't know, 10% of people that actually interact with what's popping up in their feed. So they give a like. Sometimes, very seldomly, they actually make a comment, but most of the time they just like a handful of posts. And then there's this super rare group of 0.5%, maybe 1%, that actually creates content and adds something to the platform. And so basically, when you start doing something on such a platform, even if you're really bad and you have no idea how to write a piece of content or what to share, you're already top 1% of the whole platform, right? Because no one else does it. So it's super easy. You can just get started. So basically, I would say there's two main things, secret sauces, well, they're not so secret, but what you need to do. First of all, it's just do it, right? Just get started and do it. It's not difficult. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just start doing it. And number two is keep doing it. Right? I think that's probably the thing that gets forgotten most of the time. Most of the success of these platforms is not because, I don't know, you post 3 times. It's because you post every day. And whether it's good or not good doesn't matter because the algorithm is going to forget, right? I mean, it's like your homepage, if it's on Google page 2, no one is going to look at it. That's like if you post something and it's 1 week old, no one is ever going to look at it anymore. So it doesn't matter. But the consistency is key, that you do something new every day or every 2 days or however rhythm that you want to start. I think these two things are really making all the difference, and did also for me.
It sounds like a very entrepreneurial approach to LinkedIn, as if you would build a startup, better done than perfect, and show consistency that you keep going. So now I would like to dive deep into a bit more of your content strategy. Can you tell us a bit more? What pieces of content do you work with? How often do you post? What is sort of your strategy in terms of the content plan that you publish and post through your LinkedIn profile?
I think I had a LinkedIn profile for, 12 years or so. And I started posting regularly about a year and a half ago, when I think I had like 2,000 or 3,000 followers on LinkedIn, amassed, actually basically people that I know and or at least, seen somewhere, university colleagues and friends from work, etc. And then I gave myself a challenge. I think it was in August, in summer holidays, a year and a half ago, where I said, okay, let's do 3 months of actually posting every day, one post, and just do that and see what happens. And then that was quite hard to do, actually, because you to get going and have an idea. And then I just started writing about what I encountered at Anybotics. Basically, today we did this, or that's how we think about robotics, or that's how we think about growing our sales team, or basically whatever just came to my mind. I did that for about 3 months. And then I continued until the end of the year, because it was kind of working. And these 5 months of 2022, I think I grew my followership from, 3,000 to 5,000 followers. So nothing spectacular, but you see the results. That's the nice thing in these platforms. It's not like going to the gym. You need to train for 6 months until you see something. You get started and people start following and liking the stuff. So that was actually quite cool. And then end of the year, end of 2022, I was a bit bored out, and so like, okay, you post every day, and it doesn't really. So I had a kind of bit of a pause, but then I restarted again. And then in summer last year, and that was all just text and images and basically creating my own content, which cost a lot of time and energy. And then I tried out in summer last year, to just share some cool robotics videos, because there's tons of videos, and figure out, if there's cool robotics things, maybe there's an audience for that. So I started posting some robot videos, with an immediate massive impact in terms of reach and interest. There was just started scaling from there. So I kept doing that. I kind of switched. I stopped posting all my very effortful content, and I started just sharing cool robotics videos for about another 5 months last year. Ended up at some 30,000 followers end of 2022. I thought 2023, and then I became a bit boring again to just post robot videos. So I said, okay, let's continue the robot videos, because they obviously drive more followers. That seems to work. Let's re-add my once a day some thoughts on actually adding my own thoughts to the platform, to get some more quality in there. And that's what I've been doing since. Has been working quite well. This year also another 30-40k new followers so far. So it's kind of the cool thing. It's exponential. So whenever you look at your graph, it's like, oh, it's going up. That's nice. And then you look at it 6 months later, it's still going up, but it's a different kind of thing. It's actually quite interesting. And you need to kind of get some sort of a content system ready, that you get your ideas, you save kind of certain things you see, and you optimize yourself. I don't have a lot of time to spend 2-3 hours every day to do that, so it needs to be very efficient to get it done.
It sounds like almost everything in life compounds, right? So that's also the case on the LinkedIn game, as it seems. You mentioned different content pieces. Is video the top performing content piece for you in terms of engagement, reach, etc., or what is sort of the best content format that works best for you?
Yeah, so I think it depends a lot on what you want to kind of achieve. And for me, the goal for LinkedIn has always been ultimately to somehow support Anybotics in getting more interest, getting the awareness up. And so there's multiple things. What I do is I still link now robotics as a category. I believe if that category gets more interest, that will ultimately also benefit us as a company because we're playing in that category. Then I'm sharing a lot of content around my scale-up journey, what I'm doing as a CCO here at Anybotics, and the working environment, which kind of puts a certain employer brand onto LinkedIn, because most of the people that now interview at Anybotics, at least in commercial, they somehow seen some of my content and some of the good one, scale and how we prioritize people and diversity and all these kind of things. They actually like that, so it helps to get some good inbound either leads for new hires, or helping people in the candidate pipeline to actually get a better picture of who is Anybotics as a company. And that also drives then kind of the sales cycle or the hiring cycle. Then ultimately, it's generating leads for our business. Getting some inbound of people that are actually interested in using robotics. And then to get those targets, it depends a lot on the on what kind of content you want to produce, but also then what format you use, because videos, they drive a lot of impressions. They get shared, they can go viral. So you have a couple of videos that have thousands of likes. But that's whenever it gets very viral, it doesn't really stick with the audience, because you might like a video of someone because it's a cool video. You don't follow that person. You're not interested in that person. Whenever you create content that is more meaningful, people actually start digging a bit behind it and go like, okay, who is that? And that's now the second time I saw a good infographic from that person. And I think that those are the more meaningful followers that you then have. So it's a bit both, right? It's getting the volume up, but also the quality. It depends a bit on the asset.
That sounds a bit counterintuitive, right? Because some people think, oh, I just need to have one or two viral posts and then my profile goes through the roof. But it's actually the opposite. You need to have probably less viral content, but really high quality content to then drive people towards you in whatever means.
Yeah, I guess it's a combination in a way, because I remember I probably had 6-7 months of LinkedIn, and I posted every day and put a lot of effort in it. And then at the first time I had a post, I got more than 1,000 likes. And I was like, wow, that's like insane. How can you get 1,000 likes for a post? It was crazy. And then 2-3 months later, that happened once a week, because you just got more followers and it just becomes more normal. So viral posts also is kind of a function of what is your audience, right? If you have 5,000 followers getting 1,000 likes, that's pretty viral. If you have 70K followers, which is my thing today, then getting 2,000 likes is kind of, that was a good post. And if it's only 300 likes, then that probably wasn't a good post, right? But 6 months ago, that would have been crazy for every post that you do. So I think viral helps you to sometimes just get some good stats up, but the consistency is what really makes people stick, because people don't follow you. I believe, I don't know, I don't have to prove, but I think people don't follow an account when they see something the first time. They like maybe the post, but when they see it again and again, and it's the third, the fourth time that they see something that adds value to them, either it's fun because it's a cool video, or it actually is meaningful content or so, then they go like, oh, I want to see more of that person, and then they start following you. And the viral posts, usually they end up in the people of your third, fourth kind of degree network. They see one time something from you. So it's nice if you have 500,000 views on a post, but it doesn't really drive followership, I believe. But that's
fair point. We also read from people who sometimes complain about the change in the LinkedIn algorithm. Have you also experienced that sometimes something just changed in the algorithm, and for whatever reason, you cannot really explain it, you get much less reach or even much more reach? Did you even experience something, and how do you actually keep up with the LinkedIn algorithm?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn has put a lot of efforts in the last 12 months in favoring actual content that is meaningful, number one, and kind of not favoring viral content, just for the sake of you get 500,000 likes or something like that, and more stuff where you have an expertise, and then people follow you for your expertise. And then if you have content that is adding thoughts, or is funny, or is educative, and is within your expertise, then that gets support. And if you have decent conversations and it keeps people on the platform, obviously, then that is getting support. So that has been a more fundamental change about a year ago, which also explains that it's much harder to add followers today and get viral posts than it was maybe 1 or 2 years ago. There's a couple of people that have, I don't know, 100K followers, but today when they post, they get nearly any engagement because they got a lot of those followers because they had a couple of really crazy viral posts 2 years ago, and that just doesn't happen anymore. Apart from that, I think it's all about, again, consistency and the content you produce. I'm not really trying to really figure out the algorithm. Is it better to post at 8 o'clock in the morning or at 9 o'clock? I don't know. I just post, every day, the same day. And I could try and do it differently, but probably it doesn't really matter, because eventually you'll just have people and they see your stuff. And if they like it, it's much less about the algorithm. It's much more figuring out how people think when they go through their LinkedIn feed. So what you want is you want them to stop scrolling when they see your stuff and watch it, and actually engage with it, right? So how do you do that? You don't do that when you post a video, and I post videos about whatever robotics. Sometimes you see videos that start with a very slow scene and first the logo of the company. No one likes that. The first 2 seconds need to be super action. You need to see something moving, and then you are interested and want to see more. You need to have a good hook. The first 2 lines of your post need to kind of engage people that they want to read more. I think those are the relevant things, but they're not really regarding the algorithm. It's more about how do people actually, when do people stop and listen or watch or read your content versus just keep scrolling, I would say.
Not sure how to set up contracts for your globally distributed team? Wondering how to best keep your seed round investors up to date? Join our growing community on Slack and tap into the hive mind of over 600 Swiss startup founders. Click the link in the show notes to apply to join today. That makes a ton of sense. And can you also walk us through a typical week, how you prepare and post your content on LinkedIn? Like, where do you get the content from? How much time do you invest in the content creation process? How does that look like in a typical week for Enzo?
The interesting thing is, I explained to you what I did a year and a half ago when I got started, and that's where most of the people are like, wow, that's so much work, and I would never manage to do that. So I wanted to get started and have 1 post per day. So basically, once a day, I started thinking about what do I need to write, and then you start writing, you find the visual. It probably takes half an hour to do so to get a good, decent post out, which is quite a lot of work. For then in the beginning, you get maybe 10 likes for that post, and it's depressing. And so you need to have a good system in place. Today, I post 2 to 3 times a day, usually 2 videos and maybe 1 content, 1 text post with an image. And I spend probably an average of 5 to 10 minutes max per post. So I spend less time than earlier, but I have much more content. The way I do that is, when you're more active on such a platform, you also start following other people that post great content. So I don't publish much original content. So I don't film myself and do stuff like that, because that's very time consuming. I don't have time to do that. So and there's so much content out there that is great. So if I see someone else, and I probably have another 20, 30, 40 people in the robotic space that also regularly post material on robotics. If I see some of that person finding a cool video that is interesting, and where I think I can have a perspective on it, but also see that works well on LinkedIn, because again, the first couple of seconds are very relevant. I save that post. So I have a long list of saved items in my LinkedIn app. Whenever I scroll, I like something, I save the item. And then usually in the evening, I quickly kind of go through those saved items and say, okay, that's a post. Let me do that post tomorrow. So I'll download that video. There's easy ways to download videos from LinkedIn, so I can upload it again natively and share it. And then I'll use ChatGPT to help me kind of write the text. which I think everyone that doesn't do that today is anyway kind of missing out on. And then it's mostly about I trained a couple of prompts that they write the post in the structure that I like, which has some emojis, has some structure in it, is easy to read, has a good tagline, and then it's basically I'll feed some material to ChatGPT and say, I want this and this and this idea to be included. Write a post, and then I got the text. I'll combine that with my video that I upload, and I schedule that for the next day. Takes me 5 minutes, and I'll do that twice a day, and then basically the next day the posts go live. And sometimes if I have more time, I schedule for the next couple of days, and sometimes just the next 1 or 2 posts. I usually try to have the next day scheduled because you never know what's going to happen on the next day. And if you do kind of keep the posts coming, then you need to get some system in. So now I'm fairly efficient, I would say. And then you have. There's also a lot of discussions around do you actually need to interact with all the comments that you have on your posts, etc. I don't know yet. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. I don't see any difference in the performance of those posts, really. So sometimes when I get good comments, I give some comments back. If it's just that's a great post, I just ignore it because there's really not there's nothing in a discussion, kind of.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And I heard you said 2 videos and 1 text post per day. So is that about the ratio of 2 to 1 in terms of content pieces from more viral potential versus more quality potential?
Yeah, it's kind of the videos, in my experience now over the last, 6, 7, 8 months, is they have the potential that they get a lot of reach, and also help add more followers to my account, and they establish, I would say, my persona on LinkedIn as someone that publishes a lot of cool material around robotics. Because one of my personal mission, as a person and obviously also as CCO of Anybotics, is I want to make sure that the world has a positive kind of feeling around robotics. Because there's still this thing out there that robots are going to take my job, and killer robots and all these kind of things which are not they're not to be disregarded. But there's also the other way of like, hey, a robot is going to help me. It's so cool that we actually have automation, and there's so many cool things that AI and robotics can do. And I want to make sure that as many people as possible out there get that positive feeling, because that is ultimately going to help us and every other robotics company to have an easier way in kind of really getting mass adoption of our technology, and cool videos of robots that do cool stuff, and showing people that there's a robot for everything by now. There's just everything has a robot now. Just increases that awareness. So these videos they help kind of establishing my persona, but the whole space as that's where you look for when you want to see what's happening in the world of robotics. But I don't add much of my personal value. Basically, it's a video. It's not my video. I just share, hey, this is a robot that mows your lawn, which is cool because then you don't have to do it yourself. Yeah, it's a great video, but it's not really smart, right? Everyone can do it. So I'll try to share also some stories around how we build Anybotics to kind of perform and win in the kind of robotics industry, and what are the challenges of scaling a team, and how do you actually make sure that you align marketing and sales and stuff like that, which is then more where I add value. Those posts take more time because it's actual work to do them. So I don't always have time to write a long post every day. So maybe I do one, maybe I don't. Sometimes I recycle stuff. So it might be that I had a great post 3 months ago. The topic is still relevant, but 3 months ago I had 30K followers. Now I have 70K. So there's another 40K new followers that haven't seen the post from last time. Why not share it to them, right? It's also one thing that people miss usually, that when you grow, also in startups, if you launch a new product, doesn't mean that everyone else knows your old product, right? It's still, even a 6 months old product for most of the world is still a new product, right? And I think that's the same on content on LinkedIn.
100%. You also said you get spontaneous applications or people who see you on LinkedIn and then want to work at Anybotics. You get leads that you can then tackle with your sales team. Nevertheless, I assume it's pretty difficult to really clearly measure the return on investment. Now your time investment got much lower. You spend 5 to 10 minutes per post. So that's quite an easy investment, I would say. Nevertheless, what is your return on investment from doing all these efforts on LinkedIn? Can you quantify that in any way?
I think quantifying it is difficult. You would need to track it somehow, and then you could capture some of the actual return, because some you might not know. It might be that I don't know, someone sees you on LinkedIn, but then goes via the website, and obviously that is not tracked. But at least what comes directly to me in terms of messages, and I get a ton of messages every day, and most of it are kind of people wanting to kind of sell something, obviously. But there's also some leads. Gut feeling, maybe 2, 3, 4 relevant discussions per week or so that get started like that. Most of them don't lead to anything. Some of them do. We just, quite interestingly, we just closed a really, really, really big deal a couple of weeks ago at Anybotics. And the initial contact was a person kind of reaching out to me on LinkedIn because he saw my content. It was like, hey, let's talk. And then over the last 6 months, we closed a big deal. And given robotics is not the normal total contract or total lifetime value of a couple of K, if you sell a couple of robots, that's big money. And then spending an hour a day on LinkedIn just for this one little deal would have been enough to finance my LinkedIn activities for the next years, right? So it's certainly positive return on investment, but hard to assess. And on the we also want, as Anybotics, we want to make sure that we're really a great tech employer in the area, in Switzerland and Zurich, that people know us, that as an employer, we stand for something, and that online presence, especially on LinkedIn, is also very relevant on that companies actually are active, and that people of companies are active, that you can see who is that company, what do they, what style do they have, etc. And I think that certainly helps, but also here it's hard to quantify. You could try to measure it. We don't, but it's certainly positive because we get good feedback from that.
Amazing. And you do focus on LinkedIn. So everything we talked about now is focusing on your LinkedIn game. Why don't you replicate your LinkedIn success to other platforms like TikTok or Instagram?
Maybe 3 reasons. Number one is I don't know them. So I've been on LinkedIn. I think I have a Twitter account, but I never use it. I have an Instagram account. I never use it, really. I don't have a TikTok account, and I deleted my Facebook account like 5 years ago. I never really got into using social media a lot. I started using LinkedIn as kind of my major thing, and then I started posting. So it's more about I try to create. I'm not using it too much apart from that. So you could probably do it, but I just don't know. Let's say I don't know how the other platforms works, and I figured out how LinkedIn works for us. Then I think it's also LinkedIn is a place where, again, this transition that LinkedIn goes through, they put a lot of effort and actually make it worthwhile to get creators onto LinkedIn. So there's a lot of effort going into helping people actually create content because that keeps people on the platform. And there's not that many creators yet, which means it's much easier to kind of grow your own kind of followership. So there's less competition, especially in the niche of robotics, which is an important niche. That there's a couple of online statistics that align that. I think it's one of the top 10% of niches, of 500 niches or so out there, that people are interested in and look for. But it's one of the most underserved niches in terms of content creation. So it's an easy one. If you're in robotics, you start posting stuff, you see instant growth because people are interested in it. There's not so much other people doing it. If you post about life lessons, productivity hacks and AI, stuff like that, everyone is doing it, right? So it's much harder to and there's just generally less people. And on YouTube, you need 20 million followers, otherwise you're kind of useless. And I think on LinkedIn that's not the case yet. And then lastly, I think it's very targeted also. A lot of business people, actually our audience at least, is probably more on LinkedIn than on TikTok. That will change, because but our audiences are more the 40-year-old people and not the 20-year-old people. So for B2B and in industrial segment, TikTok is probably less of an interesting channel. But I don't know. Maybe that's more a hypothesis. We could look into that a bit more.
Exactly. And if we take into consideration what you just said, is it sort of also a big takeaway for any founder out there that they should start thinking about and start building their strong LinkedIn or in general social media presence? Is that sort of the key message, the key takeaway that you would like to give away with them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, there's absolutely no reason why, as a founder, as a not even just C-level or senior manager or any sales guy, whatever, why you wouldn't spend at least some time on LinkedIn. In the beginning, it is maybe a bit effortful, and you need to get over it. And I started posting every day, and I think the first 2 months I got from all my friends, they were like, you're an influencer now, and, and why do you do that? You get all these comments. And then the comments go away. And then when you keep doing it, and then you get your first million of views, and then you get your first 10 million of views, and it just continues. And there's a lot of the positive return is great, and it's not difficult to do. Again, 2 success factors: start doing it, keep doing it. Doesn't really matter, and you get better at it anyway. So yes, I think it's super important. Also, LinkedIn now, that's very new, rolled out a feature which is kind of thought leadership promotion, whereas as LinkedIn, obviously as company, you can do paid campaigns, and you can invest in your own posts being shown as ads to your specific audience, which is great because you can actually target the audience fairly specific given all the data that LinkedIn has. But people don't want to read from companies; they want to read from people. So now, as a company, you can also promote your employees or other people's posts. So Anybotics could pay that my posts are actually shown to our core audience, which for our core audience is going to be much more interesting if they read it from a person than they read it from the company page, which is great. And if people do that, you can get much more bang for the buck for your paid campaigns as well on LinkedIn. So yeah, absolutely. Conclusion is start doing it and try and see how it goes. And I see more and more people doing it. It's actually quite interesting.
I love that. And thanks to you and joining this session today, we now have a blueprint how we can execute that and hopefully stick to it over time to also benefit from this compounding effect. Enzo, that's all I had for you today. All my questions got answered. Thank you so much for joining us here. Lots of success and all the best. And I'm sure we're going to hear and probably see and read much more from you on LinkedIn now.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Silvan, for having me on the live stream here. And everyone that has questions, just send me a connection request, add a message, because otherwise I might not see it. And then we'll connect and we'll chat about it. Thanks a lot, and too much success. Get started with LinkedIn. It's great.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.